there with the last twang of David's guitar. This is us. Hello, everybody. This is Modern Sales Meltdown with David Treacle and Gareth, many purple hats, Wax. And we talk about things in sales that either irritate or you'll nod along going, oh, yeah, all the way through. That's the whole point. We talk about stuff that most people already talk about, but they don't really take any notice of. And today's topic is no different. We do this to earn instant trust, apparently. David, what are we talking about here?
Well, I mean, we're in professions, marketing, sales, that aren't particularly the most trusted. Am I right?
I thought they loved us. Possibly not. You could possibly have something there.
Well, people a bit long in the tooth of dealing with salespeople. They're used to having the wool pulled over their eyes. They used to have the tricks of the trade, the arm twisting, persuasion. Remember neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, being used to manipulate us and, make us buy things that we don't really want to buy. And it starts right at the front end, doesn't it? When you walk into a showroom or you pick up the phone and they go, can I help you? And they're all swarmy and dressed nicely. Or they phone you up or they send you a message saying, I'm just doing some market research or something along those lines. And it doesn't start well. And then it doesn't really end well either, because these days people are rightly far more wary about who they deal with.
I would say the largest growing epidemic of cynicism I've ever seen in my career. There's most people in Europe. I won't necessarily say further afield. I can't really talk for them clearly, but I would say most people in Europe look twice at a sales message, or don't feel like they're taken in by marketing stuff in the way it used to be. If somebody turns up on your door selling vacuum cleaners and saying, look at the amazing job it does, these days they wouldn't be given the opportunity of pouring dirt on the floor and hoovering it up with their Okie Kokie 2000. The whole point is people just
now, I think you as well, but I certainly deal with a lot of people in regulated markets, financial services and professional services. And I still hear from some people in financial services and insurance and things like that, where they say things like, we're not allowed to sell anymore because of all the regulations.
What they mean is we're not allowed to lie anymore.
That's right. They're not allowed to lie anymore. They're still allowed to sell. I mean, as long as you see selling as, coaching people on how to buy things that actually help them.
Right.
But yeah, we have a problem, and it is not helped by the fact that a lot of people are trying to sell using some of the techniques that they read in books, watch on videos, see on social media by various sort of sharpshooter sales trainers, supposedly super successful people in life who then go on to forge a new career in teaching everybody else how to be that successful. And frankly, there's a lot of bullshit. And so, that is rubbing off. It's rubbing off on the Gen Zers that are coming up. It's rubbing off on the people at the other end of the spectrum, people like you and I, who are, trying to deploy all of these new fangled sales techniques and what to say and how to say it. And really, they're doing nothing to enhance their trust. We do not see an improvement in conversion rates. And that's why I end up speaking to people as well. They can spend an awful lot of money on things like marketing, but their conversion rates do not improve. And it gets worse throughout the sales cycle. If you manage to get to a position where you are quoted for somebody, and then, you get an objection, which is, perfectly valid.
Yes.
It's a bit expensive. I need time to think about it. I want to speak to my partner first. I'm just going to get, one or two other quotes, if you don't mind. The reaction that they get from the person trying to sell to them harms the trust, because the person trying to sell to them invariably has, a whole load of scripted answers to try and overcome those objections. And they end up, putting people off. What do you mean it's too expensive? It's not expensive. Actually, you know, I've just reduced it for you. Or you need to think about it. What do you need to think about? I need to speak to my partner. Right, what's your partner going to say? Let me speak to them. You know, whatever it might be that you get taught to do, and you know, puts people's backs up. But the reason it puts people's backs up is because they have diminished trust in you. But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. I know that dishonesty is well within the normal range of human behavior. In fact, in some areas of life, for example, if you're applying for a job, more people say that they would lie on a job application than don't. All right. So dishonesty is inherently within the behaviors of human beings, right?
Yes.
The struggle to sell, especially these days, if you apply your typical dishonesty or white lies or persuasion and stuff like that in a sales process, because in sales, it really is a lot to do with trust. In fact, trust will supersede things like price in terms of the influence on whether someone will buy or not. It will supersede also things like how quickly you are able to deliver, and it even supersedes quality. You know, people will.
I've always thought that trust is like an endpoint, isn't it? You've got to get to trust, and you've got to create moments of belief, so that you know when you say you want them to be able to test you. So when you say a thing to them, they go, "Oh, that's completely correct."
Yeah.
So like you get little gold stars. And there's a threshold which any salesperson wants to get to fairly quickly, whereby I don't like the word trust, because trust feels like, all right, you can have my life, you can have my wallet, you can have my wife, because I trust you.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be to the point where you have enough, you've got a thick enough veneer of trust that they'll actually open their ears and hear the rest of what you have to say.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. We don't need to become their best friend, right?
No.
But we need to be trusted enough so that we can get a job done. Yeah. That job being to find out what they want to buy and why they want to buy it, and coach them and help them make the best decision that is in their interest, so they can enjoy your wonderful services and products, which also has a payoff to you because they end up paying for it, without having to do things like discounting and all of that kind of stuff.
I think always think that kind of thing, that kind of Dutch auction type reaction to it. It's just a journey to the bottom very quickly.
So how do we go about establishing enough trust? And we could do it right at the very beginning. And one of the most influential factors in building trust right at the start of a relationship is, and in fact, we know this because, you know, we know that first impressions count. But it is how in your first interactions with them, you demonstrate that you are able to listen. Okay, so this is one of the magic tricks. Okay, and it's a magic trick that, well, I suppose I shouldn't really think of it as a trick, because it's not a trick. And I'll explain how. One of the biggest complaints that people have about sellers is that, you know, they're just not listening. They just don't listen these days. You know, they're on a one-track mind. They're trying to flog you the stuff, and a little bit like, you know, your partner back at home. You know, David, you're just not listening. You're just not listening. And you know, the funny thing about that is that when a prospect tells you something, or your partner tells you something, somebody tells you something, when they feel that you're not listening, the truth is you probably are listening. Yeah, you probably heard every word that they said. However, they don't feel like you've heard everything.
Yes.
Right. It might be that you disagree with them, or it might be that they are deploying that old technique for showing that you're an active listener by going, yeah, nodding your head and making all the right sounds. You know, that demonstrates to them. So it doesn't. That doesn't do what it's supposed to do. All right. The way that you demonstrate that you've been listening, and the way to establish trust right at the beginning, is to acknowledge their voice. How do you do that?
By repeating it back to them.
Word for word.
Exactly.
Gareth. I
because
love
you've
it.
written it down.
Exactly. And when you do that, I mean, we use this a lot in our objection handling masterclass. And by the way, we're giving away some more free places on the objection handling masterclass. It's 1 hour on Zoom. I'll put the link in the comments.
Would you give me the link right now? Because I think I might want to create a little instant QR code and put it up the top. So people
that'd be amazing. Thank you. So it's treacle.com, treacle.com/objection.
There we go.
You superstar. Thank you so much, man. But, you know, so we use it a lot in objection handling, not just in objection handling, all the way through the sales process to try and establish trust. And what we're doing here by repeating back word for word exactly what we've heard them say is we are not saying that we agree with everything that they've told us. What we are doing is we're saying, I acknowledge your voice. We are also demonstrating other amazing competencies as well, like diligence, because in order to repeat back word for word what we've said to them, if we want to do that later in the conversation, we would have had to have written it down. Yeah, right. I look at so many CRM systems and databases and notepads from all my clients. You know, they're never writing down word for word what people say. They tell me things like, oh, well, the client just told me this, that, and the other. I'd say, did they say those exact words? Well, I don't know what they said now, but, you know, what they meant was, you know, I really want to buy a service. You've got to write things down word for word. You've got to record things word for word. Think what AI is doing. You know, AI, that machine that's trying to take over your job. What it is able to do is to record accurately, word for word, what it is being told. You've got to do those things. When you do those things, and when you repeat back word for word what you've been hearing, you will see the other person nodding their head without even being able to control it. Why? Exactly as you're demonstrating there, Gareth.
Thank you.
They're doing that because they're hearing their own words. They are feeling acknowledged, and there's no way.
Recognize it. It's the recognition, isn't it? That someone has heard what it is they're on about and is throwing it back to them. It's the quickest way of making people think that you actually give a damn.
And it's and the thing is, it's not faking it. By writing it down, by repeating it back for word, you actually are forcing yourself to hear their voice. Yeah.
Right.
So it creates a feedback loop of trust. Now, does it make them trust you with their life? Of course not. Does it make you make them trust you with their wallet? Of course not. We don't need that level of trust to sell whatever we're selling usually. Okay. Right. So, you know, as you said earlier on, we're creating enough trust to get work done. And certainly in a sales conversation, the immediate work that needs to be done is for them to become open enough to tell you what their problems are, what's keeping them up at night.
You see the top right-hand corner, I've created a QR code. So if you find yourself unable to type that link in, and if you follow that QR code, which David is just trying to test to make sure it works.
Yeah, baby. I wasn't testing, so I was so tempted to click on it because I really want to attend one of these objection handling.
Of course, there we go. And so should you, because do you know what? And please don't get me wrong. You probably heard or will hear what David is going to say to you at one of these things before. But what you're going to do is you're going to wind that also into this knowledge that if you do these very small but very poignant activities at the point at which you interact with someone, you instantly start that trust building. Instantly. There's no hanging about. The very fact that they hear back to them what you said just now, and we go, wow, he's actually listening to me. That's like gold star number one. I would say it's the one thing that I've heard most often when describing salesmen. He didn't seem like he actually listened to what I was got to say. Or I said that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it's quite common.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's more common than not. And it's this and being able to do this, repeating back word for word what you have heard is a competence that is transformative in so many different areas of selling, but also of relationship building.
Right. All right. So
Well,
what I was going to say is, before we wind up today's mission, which is to help all of you out there have the poignant, single, punchy tool that allows you to start building trust from day one, what would you do? What would you say as a summary?
okay. Trust is decimated. Yeah, it doesn't really exist for salespeople. So one of the easiest ways you can stand yourself out from everybody else who's trying to sell is to get enough trust at the early stages of a sales call, sales conversation, in order for you to be able to get work done. That first work being to find out what their problems are. And all you have to do is grab a pen or open up your database, and whatever they say that's important, just write it down and then repeat it back word for word.
Do you know what? It's funny when you say it like that. It sounds like it's simple.
Well, yeah, that is true. Simple things are often very difficult actually in practice. And, you know, there are objections to this particular technique as well. So, you know, I often hear a bit of feedback saying, oh, but that's going to sound so weird. Make some people feel hokey and creepy hearing their own words repeated back to them. Okay. I hear that, you know, it is definitely a valid concern, a valid objection. You are not alone if you believe that that is what's going to happen. I can tell you this, that those who actually implement it and practice it so they become fairly fluent in it have all found that it helps them convert more of their leads and referrals into actual paying customers.
And I'll tell you what, the very act of you saying, look, I can't help you unless I get exactly what it is you need in my head. So let me just read back to you from my notes what I think you said to me just now. Blah, 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 blah. You see, it's like an instant thing. They go, wow, they actually give a damn. And on that bombshell, I want to thank all of you for watching. We have actually had a couple of messages while we've been on, and
one of them is spam.
No, one of the, what is it?
I think that one of them is spam.
Possibly. Well, thank you, Guy, for whether you are spam or real, for actually taking notice of what we have to say. And on this one occasion, I'm not going to read it back to you. Until next week, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after your mental health. Until next week, bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.